In this episode, we talk about an illegal SIM network which was allegedly being used to reroute international calls and carry out cyber fraud. We also talk about extortion rackets becoming increasingly sophisticated, with shooters taking instructions through encrypted apps and never knowing who is really behind the orders. But we begin today by talking about whether India can realistically build an Olympic sporting ecosystem when athletes say the weather and air are becoming unsafe for training. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. As India pitches for the 2036 Olympics, a growing number of athletes and coaches say training outdoors is becoming less about performance and more about basic survival in toxic winter air and extreme summer heat. And the warning signs are not coming only from Indian camps. At the Indian Open last week, international badminton players raised concerns about Delhi's air, and some even flagged it to the International Olympic Committee. So what does this mean for athlete welfare and credibility of an Olympic bid? In this segment, my colleague Ichha Sharma speaks about this issue with the Indian Express's Mihir Vasavda, the co-host of the Express Sports podcast.
Mihir, could you begin by telling us why are athletes more vulnerable to extreme weather like air pollution, heat waves, compared to the average person? And also, what actually happens inside the body when athletes train in such environments?
So to understand this particular issue better, we reached out to Dr. Randeep Guleria. He's the former chief of AIIMS in New Delhi, and he explained in very simple words. So what he's saying is, because when we are exercising, the breathing rates increases, more polluted air is inhaled, and the exposure to harmful particles is also increased. So over time, it causes breathing difficulty, chest tightness, and reduces the overall performance. And he particularly said that when athletes or anyone in general exercises in such toxic air, they're more vulnerable to heart illnesses and also brain problems.
Right, and we know that at the India Open badminton tournament, foreign players have sternly questioned Delhi as a host city for sporting events. So what exactly did they complain about?
There were loads of them. So we are talking about the India Open badminton tournament, which took place in New Delhi last week. And throughout the tournament, there were issues related to the organization of the competition, but mostly the foreign players who were in Delhi that week spoke about poor air quality. Now, for a detailed listen to it, we did a game time episode. I use this opportunity to plug game time as well, Ichha, because we did a deep dive into everything that went wrong at the India Open. And one thing that really bothered the foreign athletes was just how poor the air quality was, which made it very difficult for them to breathe. They felt that their stamina was going down, and they openly questioned Delhi's place on the global sports calendar. They said that a place with such poor quality should not be hosting major tournaments, especially because Delhi will also be hosting the Badminton World Championships in August this year.
And Mihir, when you spoke to the coaches and athletes across sports, what did they tell you about the impact this has on the rhythm of training week after week?
A whole wide range of problems. So, for example, we spoke to the hockey players, and one of their coaches, first of all, said that the athletes she trained, we're talking about a former India hockey captain, Preetam Sivaj, who was awarded the Dronacharya Award for her contribution to hockey. Now, she coaches at the Sports Authority of India Center in Sonipat. Next to the Sports Authority of India Center, there are plenty of rice factories. So you have the air pollution, plus you have the dust coming from the factories as well. And that, she said, made her athletes sick over and over again. So they would have strong bouts of cough. They would be wheezing. There would be, a breathlessness. They couldn't run at full speed. And when they went to the doctor said that it was because of the air and the water, which wasn't really great. Then we spoke to someone like Tejasun Shankar, a decathlete. And he said that it's just a daily grind to compete or train in the atmosphere, in the Delhi weather. So Tejaswin left Delhi back in November, and he's right now in South Africa. We spoke to a para athlete as well, Simran, She's a Paris Paralympics bronze medalist and a two-time para world champion sprinter. Actually, her husband, who's also a coach, is whom we spoke to. And Simran's husband said that because of the repeated sprints in training, she ends up vomiting and her cough lasts longer. So these are some of the examples which we came across. And most athletes have similar symptoms with no real solution.
Right, and you highlight how it's not just winter pollution, summers are becoming untrainable as well. And coaches say that athletes now get only 2 to 3 months a year of relatively safe outdoor training.
So the issue largely is the shrinking time for high quality outdoor training, especially in the northern belt. We are seeing higher and higher poor air quality days in Delhi and the surrounding areas when it's winter. And come summer, the temperatures are touching up to 50 degrees. And in 2024, Delhi and the neighboring areas saw the longest spell of extreme heat in 74 years. The temperature was above 40 degrees for over a month. Not to forget that there are independent researchers which state that Delhi will see the temperature increasing. It will be doubling by the year, and by 2030 it will be getting worse. So even when we look long term, Delhi will be not so great for outdoor training in summers, and in winters we are witnessing right now. In fact, according to the website aqi.in, Delhi did not record a single clean air day in 2025. So what's happening is, by the time the air quality gets better, and I'm talking in relative terms, Delhi, since it doesn't have a single clean air day in the entire year, when it gets relatively better, the temperature shoots up. So you really can't train outdoors. And that's a cycle that athletes constantly keep themselves finding in.
And here you mention how many of India's top facilities are actually in high risk zones. Like most of them lie in and around the Indo-Gangetic belt. So why has this region historically become this hub of elite sport?
Multiple reasons for that. Most of India's medalists and participants too are from this belt. So Punjab and Haryana and parts of Uttar Pradesh and Delhi, but largely Punjab and Haryana have contributed massively to India's contingent historically for major multidisciplinary games or individual games, whatever that may be. So automatically, because you have more number of athletes coming from there, you'll have more facilities centered around those places. And a lot of these places are also the legacies of the 1982 Asian Games and the 2010 Commonwealth Games. Both were held in New Delhi. So a lot of stadiums, in fact, that we see in Delhi right now, be it the Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium and the Indira Gandhi Sports Complex, which are in the center of the city, or something like a Dr. Karni Singh shooting range, which is on the southern edge of Delhi. These are all the legacies of those major events held in Delhi. And these are also the venues where athletes train all year round and international competitions are held too. Then you got something as important as the National Institute of Sport in Patiala. It's a coaching hub, coaching center of India, and it's one of those apex institutions where athletes from all over the country come and train. And again, it's a historic location, it's a historic venue, and always been the hub of Indian sport. So it's a combination of these two reasons. So that's the reason you'll find a lot of major center of excellences and big time international venues centered in and around Delhi.
And Mihir, as you mentioned earlier, that athletes are being forced to relocate. Like if we talk about Tejaswin Shankar, who trained in Bhubaneswar, then in South Africa. So when such elite athletes move, what happens to junior and grassroots athletes who can, of course, not afford this kind of relocation?
They've got no other option but to stay back and train where they are. It can be called as grinding it out, but it's nothing else but compromise for them because they don't have the money to relocate elsewhere for months. You're not talking about overseas, which many Indian athletes keep doing or they do. But a lot of Indian athletes who can afford are moving towards the south where the weather is relatively better. It's not perfect maybe, but it's better than the northern belt. A lot of young athletes we found are stuck because they don't have those resources and they battle the health crisis and continue to train. We spoke to the former India under-23 hockey team captain, Priti Panchal. She was India's captain at the 2023 Junior World Cup. And for 6 months, she was unwell. She had breathlessness, cough, allergies of all kinds. Whenever she used to sweat, her body used to itch. So these are some of the issues she faced, and after prolonged medication, it got better. She faces issues even today, but it's not at the scale as it was earlier when she was really unwell, but she's still not 100% fit. So there are examples like these everywhere, and plenty of athletes across sports are facing this.
Right, and we know that India is pitching to host the 2036 Olympics. But given that pollution and extreme heat have repeatedly been highlighted by players, how could this impact India's bid?
Uh, we don't know directly whether it will impact, but it's brought to the notice of the International Olympic Committee. At the top of the episode, we mentioned about the badminton issue, and some of the players flagged the whole air pollution problem with the International Olympic Committee. And in an email to the Indian Express, they confirmed that the Athletes Commission of the International Olympic Committee did receive the information and they're in touch. But something like a good quality air is perhaps non-negotiable if a country is to host the Olympics. So I'd assume that this will be one of the major issues. And the International Olympic Committee and also the other international federations are watching closely how the climate in India evolves, especially in the winter months, because that's when India generally hosts major events, even the 2030 Commonwealth Games, which India will be hosting in Ahmedabad, not in Delhi like last time. It will also be in the winter months. It will be in October. So everyone will be watching very closely as to how India tackles the air pollution problem. And you'd assume that the decision for the 2036 Olympics would also be, the air quality also will be taken into factor. It might not be the sole deciding factor, but it will be one of the major factors that will be taken into consideration.
And lastly, Mihir, this isn't just an issue about hosting events, right? It also raises concerns about how India plans to actually sustain high-performance sport domestically. And as you mentioned in your reportage, that athletes and coaches have been suggesting fixes for years. So why have the demands been so slow to materialize?
We don't know exactly. The official reasons are not known yet. Even in the latest recommendations to the government, badminton great Pulela Gopichand has suggested that at the NIS Patiala, at the National Institute of Sport in Patiala, there should be an indoor training center, which is temperature control. And every coach, every athlete we spoke to, be it, cycling or shooting or hockey, wrestling, boxing even, all of them say that building indoor facilities where there can be climate control and you're not exposed to the elements directly is one of the solutions, is one of the way around whatever is happening in terms of the air quality or the harsh summers in India. They've seen it work in other countries where although the air pollution might not be as bad, but the weather is extreme. Shooters talk about seeing facilities in Europe where even though it's snowing, they're indoors and they're able to practice. And similarly, in a country like Qatar, where the temperatures can go as high as 50 degrees, as we are seeing in India as well, the indoor facilities help them to continue without having to worry about, getting drained in the heat. So indoor facilities is seen as one of the fixes. But we don't know exactly why that hasn't happened yet, although there is one indoor facility in Bhubaneswar, which was inaugurated a couple of years ago.
And next, we turn our attention to Bihar, where the police have uncovered an illegal SIM network which was allegedly being used to reroute international calls and carry out cyber fraud with links to countries like Cambodia and Thailand. The Economic Offences Unit says the SIM operation alone caused losses of up to 50 crore rupees to the Department of Telecommunications, not counting the money made by the cyber fraudsters running the scheme. So how did the authorities stumble upon this network in the first place? Turns out the police's suspicions first grew after noticing an unusually high number of calls originating from the Narayanpur region of Bihar. To learn more about this SIM network and how it was operated, we are joined by the Indian Express's Himanshu Harsh, who reported on the story for the paper. Himanshu, tell us, what do we know about this cyber fraud so far? What has the police uncovered?
So the case is from a small village called Bhaluni. It's in the Narayanpur region of Bhojpur district in Bihar. On the surface, it's a quite rural area, farms, narrow lanes, scattered houses as we usually see in rural Bihar. But inside one of these houses, police uncovered a massive illegal SIM box operation. From that house, international calls originating from places like Cambodia and Thailand were being routed through Indian mobile networks. And this helped cyber fraudsters mask their real origin and their identity and their call, and they used those calls to scam people across India. And in itself, it's not a fraud in itself. Like SIM boxes in itself are not any illegal setup. Many people use it for routing international calls. But the purpose it is being used, that was illegal. Like foreign cyber scamsters were using these calls to scam people. So they are kind of running a parallel telecom operation which was masked so authorities can't track them. Like if you make a normal call, there's a chance that authorities will track and they will stop that number or block or whatever. But in this case, it was running a parallel underground network where they can't be traced. So yeah, in itself, it is not much of a crime. But yeah, being part of the cybercrime syndicate, police believes that it's much bigger trouble.
And tell us how Bihar police and telecom authorities tracked this network down.
So this actually started with data and numbers. Like the numbers were not adding up. Telecom authorities noticed that there's unnatural high volume of calls coming from that region. Like between July 5th and July 7th, over 20,000 calls were made from this area. And the population is hardly above 2,000. So it was quite surprising for the department itself. So their intelligence unit analyzed tower dumps, IMI numbers, calling pattern, and they find it very suspicious. On November 10th, they formally alerted the Bihar Police Economic Offense Unit. And once police began digging deeper, they realized that this wasn't a random misuse, and there's a structured, organized operation which clearly pointed to an illegal SIM box setup.
And Himanshu, to understand this case, we should also talk about something called VoIP. Can you tell us what VoIP is and what kind of a connection was uncovered between the situation in Bihar and Telangana through it?
So VoIP, or Voice over Internet Protocol, it's basically allows calls to be made over the internet instead of traditional phone lines.
So something like WhatsApp calls then?
Yeah, kind of WhatsApp calls. And because what happened that after numerous scam calls, people were getting the idea that if you are getting an international call, it could be a scam call. So recently, the people are avoiding such numbers. So lately, what is happening that they are using these SIM boxes to transfer these international VoIP calls, which is being converted into a local Indian mobile call using SIM box. It makes difficult for the police to track these numbers. Where are these coming from, these calls? So Narayanpur had appeared on Investors Radar before in June 2024. Telangana Police Counterintelligence Cell had flagged that the region has some potential link to illegal VoIP routing.
And talk about how this investigation was carried out, and have any arrests been made in the case yet?
So once the police joined the dot, they formed an SIT and began ground level work. One key clue was electricity. So EOU DIG Manavjit Singh Dhillon told us that SIM boxes need 24/7 uninterrupted power, which is not very common in rural Bihar. So when they analyzed power users and put in the local intelligence, officers zeroed in on Mukesh Kumar's house. When they raided it, Mukesh wasn't at home, but inside they found 4 active SIM boxes, and it has around 186 SIM cards, routers, biometric devices, phones, which is very uncommon for a region like that. So Mukesh was arrested. His wife was at home, and he told that all those apparatus belonged to Mukesh, and he was using it for nearly 2 years.
And Himanshu, we understand that the real masterminds behind this fraud are based outside India. What was the scale of this entire exercise?
So police believes that the scale is very, very big. Like according to the police, this single setup may have caused revenue losses of up to 50 crores to telecom department, apart from the larger cybercrime fraud. So investigators believe these SIM-box operations were being orchestrated from Southeast Asia, particularly Cambodia and Thailand. Young men in India were recruited online, interviewed virtually, and they were paid commissions to run these SIM boxes. The CBI is now probing this case and another similar SIM box seizure that EOU made last year in Supol. So in Supal, they had also busted a SIM-box, and that SIM-box had generated like 50,000 calls in just 72 hours. So authorities are looking into both these cases, and both these cases have now been transferred to CBI, and they had found two more cases after these two cases, and they also found trails of cryptocurrencies and all.
And you also had the opportunity of talking to DIG Dhillon, who has been looking after this case, like you mentioned. What did he have to say about this?
So DIG Dhillon was very clear that this wasn't a one-man operation. He said SIM suppliers, distributors, and even some common service center operators acted in collusion. In some cases, people's biometric data was collected under the pretext of government welfare schemes and then misused to issue SIM cards in bulk. He had explained how each SIM operator was kept isolated from others so that if one was caught, the larger network wouldn't collapse. According to him, the evidence points to a carefully designed international syndicate. He believes that there are maybe many more such setup across India.
And Himanshu, what kind of an impact has this entire situation had on the Bhaluni village from where a lot of these calls were taking place?
So Bhaluni is a small, close-knit village. There aren't enough job opportunities apart from farming and odd labor jobs. Almost everyone knew Mukesh, but hardly anyone wants to talk openly about what happened. There's confusion, shock, even a sense of disbelief. Many villagers claimed that Mukesh never left Bihar, had no farmland, while others believe he was used or influenced, tempted by promises of easy money in a place where jobs are scarce. But police have their skepticism. They pointed out that the technical setup and scale suggest a deliberate involvement.
And how do we see this going forward? Are the police looking to uncover more networks with the help of this case?
So going forward, this case is likely to expand. EOU has already transferred two cases, this one from Bhojpur and another one from Supol. And they even busted two more operations in Sitamarhi and Gopalganj. So as things came into notice, they are finding more operations and they believe that it's not a Bihar thing. I mean, the operation is nationwide. Maybe even multiple countries could be involved. So CBI will now look into this. CBI is going to focus like how it's being handled by foreign handlers, financial trails, crypto links, and all of that. Most importantly, this has now uncovered a new layer of cyber fraud. Like earlier, we used to see that call centers were used to make these cyber scams and all. But now it's just a SIM box and the whole setup is in some another country and the calls are just being transferred from here. So it's very difficult to track them and trace them and stop it from happening. But authorities are making efforts to bring this down.
And in the end, we talk about how extortion rackets are becoming increasingly sophisticated, with shooters taking instructions through encrypted apps and never knowing who is really behind the orders. The Indian Express's Alok Singh writes that now a phone call on encrypted apps like Zangi or Signal from someone calling himself Sachin or Sumit would instruct newly recruited shooters to open fire outside the home or office of a businessman. Before the attack, the shooters would be told where to collect a firearm and where to leave it afterward. This is the modus operandi that the Delhi police uncovered while investigating extortion cases linked to gangsters operating from abroad. Police says these calls are made by different members of the same gang, all using a single alias to mislead investigators and push probes into dead ends. Extortion rackets, officers believe, have become highly technical and carefully planned. Ground-level shooters are paid for their role but never know who they are really communicating with. According to Delhi police data, teams from Special Cell, Crime Branch and local police solved around 65% of extortion cases registered in 2025. But officers say the challenge remains serious. Arrests have largely been limited to shooters who carried out the attacks, while those who planned them remain out of reach. Gangs often invoke the names of well-known leaders, making it harder to identify who is actually giving orders. According to Alok Singh's report, most of the shooters arrested are first-time offenders. Senior officers say gang leaders protect themselves by hiding behind common names. Even when shooters are caught, they name the person they believe assigned them the task, but investigators say that the individual often does not exist. A similar pattern emerged in 2 firing incidents in the capital earlier this month. 2 accused, including a minor, said they believed they were acting for the Lawrence Bishnoi gang and were in touch with someone named Anil Pandit. However, the social media post claiming responsibility came from an account named Randeep Malik, which was created using an ID of someone called Sumit. The shooters were recruited through social media and communicated with gang members via Signal. In another case, the murder of Inderpreet Singh alias Perry in Chandigarh last month, the shooters claimed they were following instructions from someone named Sachin, but the police believe no such person exists in the gang. Officers say social media has become an easy recruitment tool, especially for unemployed youth. Gang members abroad create multiple profiles using leaders' names, track new followers, and approach those willing to join. Conversations then shift to encrypted apps, backgrounds are checked, and sometimes recruits are asked to prove their ability to fire a weapon. Once inducted, they are assigned shooting tasks. After an attack, gang members post messages claiming responsibility and name senior figures to create fear. Officers believe the gangsters exploit the psychology of businessmen by targeting one individual to instill fear among others, a key tactic often used by criminals. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's episode was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Ichha Sharma, Shashank Bhargava, and me, Niharika Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcast and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.